Hey everybody, I got a video here for you today. This is one I have promised for quite a while, and it's the symbolism of the Giza Plateau. And by far the hardest video I've ever tried to put into words. I mean, how do you go about this? We have these ancient structures, we have a lot of theories. Do I try to say something new? Do I try to use somebody else's theory? Do I try to mix kind of a blend of those things? But I'm just going to give it to you as simply as I can. And not really my theory, just kind of based on what I have read, and I'm not going to go into reading stuff and telling you where I got this and that. This is just based on what I know and what I've researched, and I have researched this pretty thoroughly, and it's going to be a little, maybe something new you haven't heard and things you have maybe heard, but I just need to reduce this to the simplest denominators and make it understandable. So I don't claim to be correct. There are many great theories on this. I don't claim to be correct at all. But I just ask that you take this into consideration when viewing or thinking about the symbolism of the Giza Plateau and your own views on it. And you should always take many views and form your own thoughts. Don't rely totally on somebody else's theory. Take everybody's theories into consideration and just deduce what makes the most sense. But I have already talked about the symbolism of the Great God Anubis, and he is guarding the box coffin of Orion, and that's just what the Egyptians tell us in the earliest texts that we can really rely on. And here is the great Sphinx of Giza. It was never a lion. According to the ancient Egyptians, it was the Great God Anubis. And why was the Great God Anubis such a good watchdog of the Giza Plateau? Well, it says some interesting things in the book of Coming Forth by Day, known as the Book of the Dead. It has some passages right next to each other, such as, "Thy face is that of a greyhound. He is the god of terror and the eating of people's intestines." And why does it say that in the book of the Coming Forth by Day? Because whatever species of dog this was, and I've had comments from dog experts, but jackal is one interpretation. I guess greyhound is another one that was used in the interpretations about 100 years ago of the book of Coming Forth by Day. But people viewed this species of dog, in cemeteries, digging up freshly buried bodies and literally eating their guts out. And this was the god of terror, and that's why what we know as the Greek term Anubis, these jackal-like dogs, struck fear into people that was very, very profound, and that is why this whatever species of dog this was, and we've got a few different names for it, but that's exactly why this dog was a perfect guardian of the Giza Plateau. But these paths up here, let me back out, but the paths, these are the paths of Osiris, which is basically the name of the soul of the king, and it could be used as the soul of man. Now, the symbolism of the entire plateau, I believe this is the ascension of man. Early cultures, the most primitive form of the soul of man was in the form of a dog. So I believe we have a path of the early soul of man represented in this dog, Anubis, down here as we know it as. And this is a pathway of the ascension of the soul. And this pyramid is in representation of a man. And there is multi-purposes to this layout. Now, why do I say this is the pyramid that represents man? Because in the book of the Coming Forth by Day, there is a clear and an important representation of the ascension of man, where first it's represented as a small child or a boy, The second is in representation of a man, and the last representation is becoming one with God. And I believe that not only in Orion's belt layout, but that is the symbolism of the small, the pyramid with nothing in it, and then the pyramid with all of the galleries and chambers in it. That's just my opinion. Now, there is a direct relation, I believe, in the symbolism to the movement of the sun and its journey through the day and through the night or the underworld. And it is represented in the alignments. We have the Great God Anubis aligned to the spring sunrise on March 21st, the day that represents a perfect balance between light and darkness. And then what happens on the summer solstice, the day of maximum light and enlightenment? And I believe this is where the spirit becomes a god, and that doesn't mean, you know, something supernatural or something, but it means totally enlightened and imperishable, which would be later be rewritten as being good and going to heaven in the Christian Bible. But this is the ascension of man, because we know on the summer solstice, the day of maximum light, if you are directly between these two pyramids, the sun rises directly over the Sphinx, the day of maximum light, and on that day there's a special shadow alignment on the Great Pyramid where the four-sided pyramid becomes an eight-sided pyramid. That is the day where you become a spirit or a god. Now, inside the pyramid, I'm not going to go into this too much. This is something I really tried to wrap my head around, and it's pretty difficult, but I think the simplest explanation is these passageways are representative of the sun's journey through the underworld, and then in the daylight hour, and the book of coming forth by day means being born, and this is being born as a spirit. And I believe in the king's chamber, the empty sarcophagus is just representative of the soul and the ascension. And the earliest name that I could find for the Great Pyramid was the place of the Akhet, and Akhet means becoming one with spirit. I believe that is the correct interpretation. And you have the empty sarcophagus, and then you have a little entranceway into a small room, and I believe this is the Akhet room. And it even says in the book of Coming Forth by Day, the king shall rise and stand at the doorway of Akhet. And that means becoming one with the spirit. And I believe that chamber off what is called the king's chamber is called the Akhet chamber, where you become one with God. And I believe the Bible has nuggets of ancient wisdom. And it says there is what does it say? There is a place in Egypt that is at the border of heaven, or at the border of God, something like that. And I should have had that. I should have had that passage ready. But you know what I'm talking about, those of you who have studied the Bible in Egypt. I believe that is a direct reference to this chamberway from what we know as the king's chamber into a small chamber. It is where you become one with heaven or God, the border of heaven, I believe. And that is why that is in the Bible. So that, in my opinion, is the symbolism of the Giza Plateau. It is about the ascension of man's soul from its earliest primitive form, symbolic of the dog Anubis guarding the Giza Plateau, the pathways of Orion or Osiris or the Sahu, which is symbolic of the soul of man, from boyhood to manhood to becoming one with God at the border of heaven, symbolic of the pathways through the Great Pyramid. And this day, you are born on March 21st, the day of equal light and darkness, and then you become one with God on June 21st, symbolic of the alignment between the Great Pyramid and the sun rising over the Sphinx. And becoming one with God just means you know your place in the universe, your connection to your cosmic environment, represented by your placement in Orion, in the heavens, in the afterlife. Hope you thought this was interesting, and once again, I don't claim to be correct. Just take this into consideration when thinking about the symbolism of the Giza Plateau, and, view other people's symbolism videos of the Giza Plateau. But if they don't start with the Great God Anubis, they are incorrect. Hope you thought this was interesting, and you all have a very nice day.